Welcome to Quality Branding Hub. The channel is for the quality control engineer, site engineer, and the civil engineer who are working in the construction field. In this channel, we are dealing with anything and everything which is required to get success in the construction. Now, what's the meaning of success? Success is not only about the project success, it is all about the people who are working, that means quality control engineer, site engineer, and the civil engineer. So, in this channel, we are discussing about anything and everything which is required to get success in the construction. So, what is today's topics? Today's topics is very fundamental. See, all we witness in our career that there are cracks is generating in our structure, in the building or whatever. But why this structure, this cracks is generating, and what is the reason behind this, and what is the remedial measure? So today's video is all about the different types of cracks in the building and its remedial measure. And if you are new in my channel, kindly subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get immediate notification. So without wasting time, let's jump into the subject, that is different types of cracks in the building. Now, why cracks is generating? See, this is the point that why cracks is generated. Now, the cracks in the building occur when the internal or external stresses on a component exceed its material strength. Now, if any material like concrete, steel, plaster, whatever, it has the limiting of taking the material strength. That means this can take a higher amount of strength. When this strength is lower than the building internal or external stress, it gets cracks is generating. So the fundamental things that the internal and external stresses on a component exceed its material strength, cracks is generating. Now there are different types of cracks in the building. There are some common cracks we are all witnessing. So one by one, first is the settlement and foundation movement. Now, what is the foundation? Foundation is nothing but we are placing the concrete on the soil. Now, what is our philosophy on an engineer? That whatever the load is coming from the slab, it will transfer to the beam, beam will transfer to the column, and column will transfer to the foundation. Now, all load is coming to the foundation. Now, to withstand the structure, whatever the foundation, whatever the load is coming to the foundation, that will safely pass to the soil, because ultimately we are making the building onto the soil. Now, the soil will take the load of the structure. So foundation is transmitting the load into the soil. Now this, if it is a settlement, because see, soil is a natural phenomenon, it can settle under the different stress. So one of the most common causes occurring when the soil beneath the building or beneath the foundation shifts or compacts unevenly. That means one portion of the building has more settlement, another portion of the building the less settlement. So that is a differential settlement into the building, and if there is a differential settlement into the building, the cracks can generate. That is called a settlement or the foundation movement cracks. Then another is thermal movement. Now, what is thermal movement? Building material in expand in heat and contract in cold. So when it expand and when it contracts, stress is generating. Now, if again the stress is more than the material strength, the cracks will generate. It is a normal phenomenon because our building into the environment, it is in the extreme heat also as well as the cold also. So when it's expand and when it is contract, if there is a differential stress is generating, and if this stress is more than the material strength, the cracks will generate. That we call the thermal crack. Now the next is the moisture changes. Now porous material like concrete and bricks expand when absorbing moistures and shrinks as they dry. That's called the shrinkage, causing internal stress. So it's a common phenomenon because in the environment moisture is there, and this concrete, plaster, and these bricks, so all are porous. Now if the moisture is going into the pores, or if it is dried, this is when what is happening, internal stress is generating. And again, if this internal stress is more than the material strength, what will happen? Again the cracks will generating. So this type of called the moisture change. Then poor construction practice. This is another phenomenon, because everything in the design is perfect. Now it is in the paper. Now you need to do the same things on the side. Now it is the actual part. In the quality control language, it is the quality control part. In the design is the quality assurance part. So everything is perfect, but until and unless you have done the project or you have done the work exactly whatever mentioned in the specification or the design, there will be a problem in the quality. So that is called the poor construction practice. Improper mixing of materials, inadequate curing of concrete, or using substantial material often result in early stage cracking. These are we have in our hand, because whenever we are working on the site, we can select the right material, we can select the right mixing properties, curing, because it is a very much important that curing. If the curing is not proper, cracks will generate 100%. Why? If the curing is not proper, the moisture inside the concrete or in the plaster, it will evaporate into the environment, and when it will evaporate, the thermal cracks will generate. So that is why curing is very much important. So poor construction practice is also a reason for the cracks. Then chemical reaction. It's really important that whenever we are working on the site, we need to know what is the chemical reaction, what is the chemistry of the concrete, chemistry of the plaster, chemistry of the brickwork, whatever, because it's all about the chemistry. So whenever we are adding water into the concrete, the chemical reaction is happening. So to make our concrete safe, to make our building safe, we need to know the chemistry of the concrete. So chemical reaction, process like sulfate attack or the corrosion of reinforcement still increase volume of materials, causing them to push outward and crack. See, it is happening if the chloride or the carbon dioxide enter into the concrete mix. What will happen? It will break the passive layer of the steel and it will start corroding. And if the steel is start corroding, what will happen? The volume of the steel is increasing, and if the volume is increasing, internal stress is generating, and the cracks and the spalling of the concrete will happen. So this is the chemical reaction. Also, the when a carbon dioxide is entering into the mix, it is forming the calcium carbonate. That is also this shrinkage is happening. This is called the autogenous shrinkage. So this also causes the cracks of the buildings. This is called the chemical reaction. Another types of cause is the elastic deformation and creep. Now the creep coefficient, all we know that the settlement under the impact load for the prolonged period, and uneven loading walls or long-term sustained load, that is a creep, can lead to slow time dependent deformation. Like if you place overhead reservoir directly under the slab without taking the creep coefficient, what with a sustained load is a long time, so that settlement can happen and the cracks can generate. That called is the elastic deformation and the creep cracks. And then the vegetation. Now the vegetation is a problem. Now why vegetation is generating why vegetation is coming onto the wall? See, in normal cases in our concrete, its pH is more than 12, and in the more than 12 pH the vegetation cannot sustain. But whenever the carbon dioxide entering into the mix into the concrete, what is happening? This carbon dioxide start reacting and it lower down the pH. Only then the vegetation are growing onto the wall, and if the vegetation is growing, the cracks will generate because its roots will penetrate and it will generate the external stress and it will cracks. So it's called the roots of large trees near a foundation can dehydrate the soil, leading to settlement or direct physical pressures on the wall. So another wall also, if you have the big trees, trees can and the root can penetrate and it can crack the foundation. So these are the possible reason or the different types of cracks for the building, that is a settlement and a foundation movement, thermal movement, moisture changes, a poor construction practice, chemical reactions, elastic deformation and creak, and the vegetation, and also the shrinkage crack. That is also important. The shrink means the volume changes during the chemical reaction, because whenever adding water, this chemical process is starting and that time the volume is shrinking. So due to this shrinkage, the cracks is generating. That's also the shrinkage cracks. So what another types of cracks into the building. Now different types of cracks, this is the reason I have discussed. Now different types of cracks can generate into the building. So that are, first is the hairline cracks, a very thin, less than 1 meter, then the surface level crack. uh, that it can generate in the building. This is the plaster drying or the minor settlement is the likely cause. The another key is the vertical crack, that's a run straight up and down, that is the minor settlement or the thermal expansion is the reason. So what is the hairline cracks and the vertical cracks. Then the horizontal cracks can generate, that is also a run parallel to the floor. This soil pressure, water damage or overloading, this is a serious issue. If you are finding any horizontal cracks, that means soil pressure, uplifting pressure is become more, the water drainage is damages the structure or the overloading of the structures can happen. So if the horizontal cracks, it's sometimes called the structural cracks, because in the site we are saying non-structural cracks and the structural cracks, and it is widely we are using if we find any cracks, we are saying, oh, this is not structural cracks, okay, we can do this treatment, okay, this one may be structural, then we call the structural engineer for the review. But it is my advice or recommendation that whenever you are facing any type of cracks in your building, start consulting with the structural engineer, because they are the designer and they know better than us why this cracks is generating and what can be the remedial measure. So without taking action by your end, do the consultation with the structural engineer, because it's a structure, so they know better than us, so no need. So ask for the structure. Now, if the diagonal crack for in the 45-degree often at the corners, that means foundation setting or the uneven settlement. That means in the structure, in the all the structure are not settling in even way, that there is something more and something less. So then these diagonal cracks can generate. And then stair step cracks, the zigzag pattern along mortar joints, the significant foundation settlement in the masonry. These are the also is a problem. If there is a significant amount of settlement we are observing on the structure, call the structural engineer. If you are finding diagonal stakes, call the structural engineer. If you find horizontal cracks, call the structural engineer. But what is our part? Our part is whatever the structural engineer has given us, what is the methodology he or she has proposed, we need to follow blindly, because they are the designer and they know better than us. But as a site engineer, as a quality controller or as a civil engineer, you need to know what is the different types of cracks. So in the first glance you can find out, oh, these cracks, so immediately you can call the structural engineer. Otherwise what will happen, you say, oh, this cracks is not a problem, so it will you left like this and this will damage the whole structure. So that is why as a site people you need to know what are the different types of cracks and why it is generating. Then you can take the call to the structural engineer and take the remedial measure. Then the grazing type of crack, that means network of fine, shallow or random cracks, that is a rapid moisture loss during curing. So these are happening in the building or in the structure. So these are the hairline cracks, or sometimes we call deep crack, width crack, depending upon the what is the width and what is the depth. But this all the cracks has the reason, because without the reason it cannot generate the cracks in the building. And these cracks can be a structural or can be a non-structural, but you need to take the precaution and you need to do the immediate remedial measure. But who will give you the remedial measure? Only the structural engineer can give the remedial measure, or the designer. So call them and ask their recommendation. But the measure, this commonly using whatever the remedial measure we are using into the construction, it is the common practice, that is the grouting and sealing. For non-structural crack, again, whether it is a structural crack or the non-structural crack, only the structural engineer will ensure, not us. But for the non-structural cracks, the gap is cleared and filled with flexible sealant and cement grout to prevent water ingress. So grouting and sealing is the one way to remove the cracks or rectify the cracks. Another was the epoxy injection. The used for structural repair in concrete, resin is injected under pressure into cracks not even as narrow as the 0.05 mm to restore structural bond and structure. So when you need the epoxy injection, maybe the structural cracks, so who will decide that one? structural engineer. Then the stitching. The holes are drilled on both sides of the masonry crans, and metal stitching rods are anchored across it with epoxy or reinforcement to the wall. So another type of repair method of the crack, that is the stitching method. Then underpinning. What is underpinning? For severe foundation related cracks, the soil beneath the foundation is excavated and reinforced with concrete or piles to stabilize the base. So this is called the underpinning. And the waterproofing, yes, it's important. If you are not protecting your structure from the water ingress, this structure can be a problem. The structural failure can be happen. So waterproofing is also another way to rectify the cracks. So applying external coating on the primers like seal or primer can prevent moisture driven cracks from reoccurring. The first is you need to seal the cracks, then you need to do the waterproofing. Then monitoring. Now why it is important? Because we are not making the building for 1 year or 2 years. It's maybe 80 years, 100 years. So regular interval you need to check that one, whether is there any cracks is generating or not. So but we are just forgetting the maintenance of the concrete is also important, maintenance of the building is also important. So on the regular interval you need to check the building, you need to check the cracks if it is generating, or any other things, whatever is coming into your eyes that it may cause the problem of the concrete. Call the structural engineer. But the regular way you need to maintain the structure, and you need to inspect maybe in the once in a 6 month, once in a 3 month. Fix the frequency, but do the inspection on the regular basis. So for that you can find out if there is any cracks or not. So these are all about the different types of cracks, why the cracks is generating, and what is the remedial measure. So whenever, now if you are in the site, if you find any cracks, what you will do? Call the structural engineer and ask their recommendation and do the rectification as per their recommendation only. I hope you find it useful, and if you find it useful, kindly subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that whenever I upload a new video you will get immediate notification. And I am waiting for your valuable comments, so that from your valuable comment everybody will be benefited. And if you want to know anything more about quality control and construction, please let me know. I will come with more content like this. And thank you once again for watching me.